You know what's the scariest thing you can do with your money? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just let it sit there in your checking account month after month while you tell yourself you'll figure out investing later. Maybe when you make more money, maybe when things calm down a little, maybe next year. Here's the problem. Later is costing you a fortune. And I'm not talking about some vague, theoretical fortune. I'm talking about a specific, calculable amount of money that is quietly disappearing from your future right now, today, while you're watching this video. My name is Brett, and I spend a lot of time thinking about the financial decisions that seem harmless in the moment, but end up being absolutely devastating over time. And not investing your money is probably the most expensive mistake a person can make without ever feeling like they made a mistake at all. If you've ever told yourself you'll start investing when the time is right, make sure you watch this entire video, because by the end of it, you're going to understand exactly what that decision is actually costing you. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up changing how you think about your money. Let's start with something that sounds completely harmless. You've got $10,000 sitting in your checking account. It's been there for a while. You're not spending it recklessly, you're not gambling it away, you're just keeping it safe, responsible, right? Wrong. That $10,000 is losing value every single day, not because someone is stealing it, not because the bank is charging you fees, but because of something called inflation, and most people dramatically underestimate how brutal it actually is. Here's what inflation actually does to money. The average inflation rate in the United States over the last several decades has hovered around 3% per year. That sounds tiny, 3%, big deal. But let's run the real numbers, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. That $10,000 sitting in your account today, in 10 years, adjusted for inflation, it will only have the purchasing power of about $7,400. You didn't spend a single dollar, you didn't lose anything on paper, but you effectively lost $2,600 just by doing nothing. In 20 years, that same $10,000 only buys what $5,500 worth of stuff buys today. In 30 years, you're looking at the purchasing power of roughly $4,100. So let me ask you something. If someone walked up to you today and said, "Hey, I want to take $5,900 from you over the next 30 years, and there's nothing you can do about it," you tell them to get lost. But that's exactly what's happening when you leave your money uninvested. Inflation is that thief, and it works so slowly and so quietly that most people never even notice it happening. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because inflation stealing your purchasing power is half of the story. The other half is what you're missing out on by not letting your money grow. And this part is what I really want you to understand today. Let's talk about compound interest. I know, you've heard this before. Compound interest is powerful, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think most people actually feel it until you see the real numbers laid out in a way that makes your stomach drop a little. Here's the simplest version. You invest $10,000 today. You never add another dollar. You just let it sit in a basic index fund earning an average of 8% per year, which is historically conservative for the stock market. After 10 years, that $10,000 has become $21,589. After 20 years, it's $46,610. After 30 years, it's $100,627. You did nothing. You didn't work harder, you didn't pick stocks, you didn't time the market. You just let time do the work. $100,000 from a single $10,000 investment and 3 decades of patience. Now flip that around. If you wait just 10 years to start, that same $10,000 only has 20 years to grow instead of 30. And instead of $100,000, you end up with $46,610. The cost of that 10-year delay? Over $54,000. Gone. Not because you spent it, not because you made a bad investment, just because you waited. That is the real price of doing nothing. And we haven't even gotten to the part where most people are doing something even worse than just waiting. Because here's the reality for a lot of people. It's not that their money is sitting in a checking account earning 0. It's that their money is sitting in a savings account earning 0.5% interest, and they think that counts as being smart with money. And look, A high-yield savings account absolutely has its place, but let's be real about what that 0.5% is actually doing for you compared to what the market historically returns. If you park $10,000 in a standard savings account at 0.5% for 30 years, you end up with $11,614. $11,600 after 3 decades. Meanwhile, the same $10,000 in an index fund earning 8% turned into over $100,000. The difference between those two outcomes is $88,000. $88,000 from one decision made once. Now imagine that's not just $10,000. Imagine that's what you could have been investing every single year for the last decade. This is where the numbers stop being uncomfortable and start being genuinely painful. Let's say someone starts at age 25 and invests $500 per month into a basic index fund. By the time they hit 65, assuming that same 8% average annual return, they have $1,745,503, almost $1.75 million from $500 a month for 40 years. Now, let's say their friend waited until 35 to start. Same $500 a month, same 8% return, but only 30 years instead of 40. They end up with $745,180. The person who started 10 years earlier ended up with over $1 million more from the exact same monthly contribution. The only difference was when they started. And here's the part nobody likes to say out loud. Most people aren't starting at 25. Most people are 30, 35, even 40 years old and still telling themselves they'll figure it out later. And every single year they wait, that gap grows wider and harder to close. But let's take this even further because I want you to really understand the full picture here. Because it's not just about what your money could have been doing. It's about the hidden tax you're paying on your own financial paralysis. Think about the average person's financial life. They get paid, they pay their bills, they spend what's left. Maybe they put a little in savings. And month after month, year after year, they tell themselves they're being responsible because they're not going into debt. They're surviving. They're fine. But fine is not a financial plan. Fine is just a slower version of falling behind. Because while they're being fine, inflation is eroding their purchasing power. Their savings account is barely keeping up with anything, and every month that passes is a month of compound growth they will never get back. Time is the one resource in investing that you absolutely cannot buy more of. You can always earn more money, you can always cut more expenses, but you cannot go back in time and start investing 10 years ago. The most expensive thing in personal finance isn't about investment. It's a delayed start. Now, let's talk about something that makes this even more real, because I think the numbers are important, but what really drives this home is understanding what all of this money actually represents in your life. That extra $1 million that the person who started at 25 has over the person who started at 35 is not just a number. That's the difference between retiring comfortably at 62 and working until 68 because you have to. That's the difference between paying for your kids' college without breaking a sweat and watching them take on student loans you can't help with. That's the difference between having options and not having options. Money at its core isn't about being rich. It's about freedom. The freedom to choose how you spend your time. The freedom to leave a job that's making you miserable. The freedom to help your family when they need it. And every year you delay investing is a year you're quietly trading away pieces of that future freedom without even realizing it. Here's something that I find fascinating about this whole topic. When you ask people why they haven't started investing, the answers are almost always the same. I don't have enough money right now. I'm waiting until I understand it better. The market is too risky. I'll start when things stabilize. And here's the thing. Every single one of those reasons feels completely valid in the moment, but none of them hold up when you actually examine them. Let's start with I don't have enough money. Most investment platforms today let you start with as little as $1. $1. You don't need thousands of dollars to get started. You need a decision and a recurring transfer. Could you find $50 a month, $100? Even $25 makes a difference when you start early enough. The amount matters far less than the habit and the timeline. I'm waiting until I understand it better. Here's the brutal truth about this one. You will never feel like you understand it well enough to start. There is always more to learn, and every month you spend learning instead of doing is a month your money isn't growing. The best investment education you will ever get is actually investing. Open an account. Put money in a basic index fund. Watch it move. You'll learn more in 6 months of doing it than in years of reading about it. The market is too risky. This one drives me crazy, and I get it. I understand where it comes from. The market goes down sometimes. Sometimes it goes down a lot. 2008 happened. 2020 happened. And yes, if you had invested at the exact wrong moment and then needed the money the next day, that would have been bad. But here's the thing. The stock market has never had a 30-year period in history where it ended lower than it started. Not once. Ever. The risk of investing over a long timeline is genuinely much smaller than most people think. The real risk is not investing at all. I'll start when things stabilize. Things will never fully stabilize. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be something happening in the economy or the world that feels like a good reason to wait. That's just how life works. The people who build wealth aren't the ones who waited for the perfect moment. They're the ones who started in an imperfect moment and stayed consistent anyway. So let's talk about what actually getting started looks like, because I don't want this video to just be a bunch of scary math that leaves you feeling overwhelmed and does nothing. I want you to walk away with this with a clear picture of what the first step actually is. Step 1 is simple. Open a brokerage account. If your employer offers a 401k with a match, start there first, because that employer match is literally free money, and it's the highest guaranteed return you will ever find. After that, open a Roth IRA if you're eligible. Both of these accounts let your money grow without the government taking a cut every year, which compounds your growth dramatically over time. Step 2. Set up an automatic contribution, even if it's small. The automation is what makes this work long-term. You stop thinking about it, stop second-guessing it, and you start building the habit of paying your future self first every single month. Step 3. Put that money in a simple, diversified index fund. You don't need to pick stocks, you don't need to time the market. A simple total market index fund or an S&P 500 index fund gives you exposure to hundreds or thousands of companies at once, keeps your fees low, and historically outperforms the vast majority of actively managed funds over the long run. That's it. That's the whole strategy for most people. It's not complicated, it's not exciting, but it works. And it works specifically because of everything we've talked about in this video. Time and consistency beat complexity every single time. Here's what I want you to take away from this. The most dangerous financial mistake you can make isn't a bad investment or a failed business or even a mountain of debt. All of those things can be recovered from. The one thing you cannot recover from is lost time. Every year you wait to start investing is a year of compound growth you will never get back. And those years, especially the early ones, are worth more than you can possibly imagine in the moment. The $50 you invest today is worth more than the $500 you invest in 10 years. That sounds counterintuitive, but the math doesn't lie. Time in the market always beats timing the market, and the best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is right now. Your future self is going to look back on this moment. Make sure they're looking back with gratitude, not regret.